Run, river, run, run through the hills. Run, river, run to the sea. Run, river, run to your place beneath the sun. Run, river, run over me.
Hi, this is Jan Lewis. Welcome to be my guest. Today we have back an author that we've had on numerous times. We started in 2012.
Right.
And he's been on many, many times. His name is Ed Londergan, and he is going to tell you about his latest book, historical fiction, and it is, unlike any other, it's called, based on a true story. He's going to tell you all about it.
Yeah.
This is the cover. Did you design this, or did your publisher design it?
Publisher with my input.
Good. That's rare. Usually they just take your book and...
No, we went through the whole process. They actually sent me a questionnaire and said,
Good.
what do you have in mind?
Yeah.
We worked back and forth. The cover has actually changed a little bit.
Yeah, I got the... Which one
Because
have
we had to make Bathsheba older.
Which one have you got?
This is the new one.
Oh, same one I have.
This is the old Bathsheba because the original one, she looks like lipstick and nail polish, which they didn't have in 1778.
No.
So we had to move it. But it's a fascinating story. It really is.
It isn't.
I mean, I've wondered about that. What makes her story so fascinating? What's captivated people for 244 years? And I think it comes down to a lot of the unanswered questions. There are things that happen that people go, I don't get it. Why did they do that? Why did she do this? But, I mean, she was the daughter of a very powerful guy, Timothy Ruggles. He was wealthy. He was Speaker of the House of Representatives, President of Stamp Act Congress, Chief Justice of one of the courts, General in the French and Indian War. I mean, the guy had a few things going for him.
Right.
And supposedly she was his favorite child.
Yep.
He had big British leanings during the Revolutionary War. He was a loyalist and sided with the British. And we don't know how she got married to the guy she did, Joshua Spooner. Whether she was forced to marry him, or whether she did it of her own volition, or what. But she ended up with this guy, Spooner, who was a fairly wealthy merchant, well-to-do. But there were so many different characterizations of him, from being this meek little mild guy that no one could stand to an abusive philanderer who drank a lot. So it was somewhere in between.
Right.
But somehow Bathsheba got hooked up with him. And over 10 years and 4 children, she came to despise him. Her own quote is she had an utter aversion to her husband. Now, her father ended up going to Boston for the siege of Boston. He was with the British, and she was left alone there. And I think she had British leanings. I think so. But after 10 years, she couldn't take it with this guy anymore. She just couldn't. So in 1777, February 1777, a 16-year-old Continental soldier collapses at her doorstep. He was paroled from Washington's winter camp in Morristown, New Jersey, and the kid was walking 300 miles home to Ipswich in the middle of winter. Sick, pneumonia, the flu, whatever he had. Boom. She brings him in, nurses him back to health, sends him on his way a few weeks later. Glad we could help. There you go. 5 months later, he comes back on his way to fight at Saratoga.
Yep.
A little something happens there. It had to. Because he goes off and comes back, he survives, and he spends 2.5 months with Spooners. And Spooner takes a liking to him. The husband takes a liking to him. He takes the kid on business trips with him. He does all sorts of things with him. So
Little did he know.
He didn't. And then, something happened with Bathsheba and the kid, Ezra Ross. And next thing you know, he got her pregnant.
Yep.
At that point, she's trying to figure out what she's going to do, so she asked the kid to poison her husband.
Yep.
You can be here with me, you can be man of the house, you can have all of this if you just get rid of him. Our troubles will be over. And he refuses to do it. He's with Spooner on a trip up to Petersham, I think it is Princeton, whatever, and she gives him poison, which he doesn't give to Spooner. Instead, he rides home to Ipswich. And when Spooner comes back, there were people in the house that said, She had never looked so shocked in her life, and she said, I've never been so stumped in my entire life, because she never expected to see Spooner again. Well, Spooner's off on another trip a little while later, and I think she had British leanings. And again, it's historical fiction, so you take the historical facts and you build a story around it. But these two British prisoners of war arrive at her door. Now, after the Battle of Saratoga, General Burgoyne surrendered his 6,500 troops. The deal that was cut there was, all right, you guys march back to Boston, we'll send you back to England. And the Continental Congress kind of went, whoa, time out here. Why are we going to pay for these people to go to England to come back and fight against us? We're not paying anything. So 6,500 soldiers were just left in the Boston area. No one wanted to house them or feed them. Why should they? They were the enemy. Some people took them in, some didn't. But they were tradespeople. They were blacksmith, carpenters, tinsmiths, whatever. Millwrights, wheelwrights, coopers. So they started finding work. But they were able to wander all over the place. So two of them, James Buchanan and William Brooks, lived at Bathsheba's door. She takes them in, brings them in, have some food and drink. Huge blizzard. They end up staying over a week. She fills them with the finest food, the finest drink, whatever. They're treated like kings. And maybe persuaded them with her feminine wiles, I don't know, but she got them to agree to kill her husband. Yeah, no kidding. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But they go off to Worcester, and then they come back, and they're back and forth.
Ruggles is a big name out in Westboro.
What?
Ruggles.
Oh, yes, Ruggles,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
There are a lot of Ruggles families
Yeah,
around,
definitely.
but I can chat about that in a second. But anyway, so they come back, and she's like, tonight's the night we're going to do it. Well, the kid shows up with a brace of dueling pistols. He's going to challenge Spooner to a duel, because that's the only legal way you can kill someone. And of course, he never thinks about, people would wonder why a 17-year-old kid is challenging the wealthiest man in town to a duel. What could it be? Anyway, the soldiers convince him not to do that. Spooner comes home from the tavern. Brooks and Buchanan go outside. They basically beat him to death, and not being the brightest bulbs on the tree. They stuff him down the only well on the farm.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah, you know. Hey, look, there's Mr. Spooner's feet. Hey, it must be him.
Sounds like an episode of Dateline.
It does. It's, it's one of those. You kind of wonder.
Yeah.
But I mean, that wasn't the only odd thing that happened. There were 11 people in that house when they murdered him. 2 servants, 2 business associates of Spooner's who were staying over, their 3 kids, the soldiers, Ross, Bathsheba, and I mean, there were a lot of people.
It's kind of a crapshoot, isn't it?
But you think about it, all right, I'm going to murder somebody, let's wait till everybody's here.
Yeah.
That's another thing that raises the question, why?
Why?
But, so, what she does, again, not being in her right mind, I guess, she pays the soldiers and Ezra with their husband's money, his jewelry, like his engraved watch that says Joshua Spooner on it, shoe buckles, the whole 9 yards. Some clothing that fit them, here you go. Brooks, he was the one, I guess, who was wearing the clothing and had the watch. They go to Worcester. Well, they start drinking.
Yeah.
Somebody looks and says, why are you, an ex-British soldier, wearing such fine clothes?
Yeah.
Where did you get that watch? Let me see it.
Yeah.
Joshua Spooner, I know him.
Yeah.
You're not him.
No.
Word of the murder reaches Worcester. They're arrested. They say, she made us do it. She's arrested. She said, I had nothing to do with it. They did.
Yeah.
They're all tried and convicted and sentenced to hang.
Yeah.
That's when she says, I'm pregnant.
Yeah, that's a tricky one right there.
I'm pregnant.
Oh.
And it's like, all right. So she appeals to the ruling council. There wasn't a real government in Massachusetts. They were a group of men, 15 men who ran the state. And she appeals to them, can I have a stay of execution? So they said, well, you can have an exam. We'll have midwives examine you. She was about 4 or 5 months pregnant. And if you look at a naked woman who's 5 months pregnant, you can kind of tell. They said, all 12 of them said, no, she's not.
Do you
She's
think
not.
would you think it was a lie? Do you think?
Of course. because her father was one of the most hated men
Oh, yeah.
around in New England.
Yep.
As a matter of fact, Paul Revere did an engraving of her father, leading a bunch of men to hell. March on, Tim.
Yep.
So anyway, she says, I'm pregnant. Midwives examine her, you're not pregnant. She asks for another one. 3 of the people, one of whom is her brother-in-law, who's the most prominent doctor around, and 2 others say, yeah, she's pregnant. 3 women, 3 other midwives, from the original group say, no, she's not. That goes to the ruling council. Her dead husband's stepbrother, John Avery Jr., is the deputy secretary. He's basically the second in command.
Yep.
And I think he persuaded them to go and let her die.
Oh, yeah.
So on July 2nd, 1778, during a thunderstorm, Bathsheba and the other 3 were hanged in Worcester, about where Washington Square is now. And
Now, wait a minute, I know Worcester pretty. Where's I know...
Union Station, the train station?
Okay, right.
Right in front of that.
There.
Right in front of
that Rotary?
Well, it's a flat area, and you had to accommodate
So they
about
got it right in the
5,000 people.
middle.
Right about there, you know? But supposedly there were about 5,000 people that came to see this.
Yeah, yeah.
She had requested an autopsy. I don't know who performed it, but she requested it, and one was done. Probably her brother-in-law, I would imagine. And she had a 5-month-old male fetus inside her.
Oh, yeah.
So, her sister Mary, Dr. Green's wife, said, you know, I don't want to bury her in Brookfield because the hatred out there towards her. Plus, her dead husband's buried in the cemetery. Probably not a good place. So she has Bathsheba, her unborn child, buried on her estate in Worcester, which in 1905 became Green Hill Park when the family donated it to Worcester.
Yep.
The thing is, though, the grave, I think, was marked at one point. But in 1899, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, the women's rights advocate, she wrote an article about, you know, the last woman hanged in Massachusetts, something like that, or the only woman hanged. And that caused this big stampede to Green Hill Park to see Bathsheba's grave.
Yep.
So they took whatever markers, I saw one, it looked like it had a fence around it. They took that down, so there was no indication of where her grave was. And supposedly the last person who knew took her to the grave in 1940 when they died. No one knows anymore. So Bathsheba, an unborn child, lies somewhere within Green Hill Park.
Yeah.
I think it's under the 6th fairway because it's kind of right near where the house was. But anyway.
Yeah. It's weird. This girl was pregnant.
Yeah.
And they hung her. Now, if they had found out that she wasn't, was there a rule back then?
There was a thing called pleading your belly.
Okay.
And a lot of women, and that was in merry old England. It was done here too, but not too much, because a lot of women weren't sentenced to die. But yeah, they would plead their belly, I'm pregnant, and everything would be kind of forgotten, and they'd go on their way after they had the kid.
Oh, she just missed that one. Hey.
If she had been somebody else,
Yeah.
besides Timothy Ruggles' daughter, probably would have got away with it.
We are talking Ed Londergan, and he has written the historical fiction book. He can tell you all about it, unlike any other. What made you choose that title?
Well, Bathsheba is fascinating me. I mean, we live within about 10 minutes of where this all happened.
Yeah.
So the local legend has been around for a long time, and I heard it for years. And I know a guy, he does nonfiction books. He took a crack at Bathsheba, his historical fiction book, and even he admitted it's horrible.
Yeah.
And he said, you're a much better writer of this than I am. Why don't you do one?
I wonder if we know him.
Jeff Fisk is his name.
Well, Fisk is very popular in Upton.
Yeah,
So
no,
we live in
he's-
a house that was a Fisk.
He's from New Braintree.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Joe,
Jeff-
how can they get your book, Ed?
It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Indie Books, Hudson Bookseller, Powell Bookseller. Online, you can go to any bookstore and order it. It's there. No man. And yeah, if they want to look at my website, it's edlondigan.com, and I have all the information there too.
Well, you know, you'll be able to pick up some of these books downstairs, too, at the Upton Town Library. Don't be shy. Go get it. And our dedicated authors section. I love the back of this. Of course, that picture of you, I mean, you haven't changed at all.
Well, I grew this, but
Yeah.
you know, besides that.
The story of an 18th century woman from a prominent New England family who went from a life of privilege to the gallows. What made you want to do this? Your curiosity?
Well, like I said, I knew the story. Jeff suggested it, and that got me thinking. It's like, I was working on another book.
Remember The Devil's Elbow?
Yeah.
He was on many years ago.
Oh yeah, Devil's Elbow, and then The Long Journey Home. But I was working on this other book, and Bathsheba's story was kind of rattling around inside me, and I had to get it out. So I put the other book aside and wrote this. But the more I learned about it, the more it hooked me.
Yeah.
And Bathsheba's kind of become a passion with me.
Well, it's a mystery.
It is. It's one of those that you look at and go, why did they condemn a pregnant woman to death?
Yeah.
Why was she actually executed? Why didn't anybody believe she was pregnant?
But the men won out, though. Back then, they're the ones who said, get her. And they won out.
But the thing is, not one of these 15 men ever said a word about her being pregnant when she was executed.
Yeah.
And the tide of opinion kind of turned the day after her execution, because it's like, my God, you actually killed a pregnant woman.
Yeah.
And they still didn't like Bathsheba because of her association with her father and the fact that she had her husband murdered. But, besides that, she was okay. And,
Yeah, right.
she could have been fun. She could have been fun at parties. I don't know. But anyway.
Her father sounds like a really you-know-what.
Yeah. But they just, I don't know. It just didn't go in her favor. But there are a lot of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
And you sit there and go, why? And you don't have answers.
Were the men so furious at her for annihilating her husband? Could that have... I mean, back then, women didn't have a voice in anything.
Well, from what I gather, she was an unusual woman to start with. She was well-educated.
Yeah.
And there were a couple letters she wrote petitioning for a stay of execution.
And a wealthy family.
And a wealthy family. Probably had a tutor of some type.
Sure.
She was, you could just tell by the way she was writing, she was well-educated, well-spoken, but there's no other physical evidence for it. There is no image of her. There's only one of her father.
Yeah. So you had no image, so you had to imagine what she looked like.
Right.
Good job.
Yeah, thank you. That cover took, I don't know, a month going back and forth with the publisher and the graphic designer and me, and bouncing it around, and that's probably about the 11th image that we came up with.
Is that a real house where she lived?
No.
No, okay.
No, that's just a New England farmhouse.
It looks, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've had people tell me, oh yeah, my sister lives in that house. And it's like, well, that's a good thing, but you know.
You got the right time frame.
Yeah, oh yeah. But
how old was she when she was
She was 32.
And how old was she when she killed her husband? Had her husband?
31. Well, no, 32. She was tried and executed within a couple months of the murder.
Well, what happened to her lover there? I forgot what happened to him.
They all got
he got it too.
The 17-year-old kid got it, yeah. But I mean, this was big doings, and people came from all over to see this.
5,000 people to see this in the center of Worcester.
Right. And, you know, Ezra's father was there, and the minister from their town was there. I think his mother was probably there, or maybe not. The parents wrote a petition to the executive council, this long, deeply moving petition about their son, the last of their 6 sons, and how he'd gone and fought at Bunker Hill when he was 14 years old. He went with his brothers. He was down at New York with Washington. He was at Trenton. I mean, the kid fought. When he came back to Brookfield, he was already a battle-hardened veteran.
Were these guys Union? Not Union.
They were Continentals. They were American patriots. Yes.
Yeah.
Rebels.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out the Whigs and the Tories. That was.
That was after. That was after.
That was okay.
After.
But they were pro-Britain or against?
No. They were American.
Guys. My great-grandfather Jocelyn was the inventor of the Jocelyn rifle in the Civil War.
Really?
And the government bought his rifles from him.
Cool.
So my middle name is Jocelyn. I was named after my great-grandmother, who was his daughter-in-law.
Cool.
Yep.
That works.
There you go. You got a family of rogues.
I'll tell you.
A rogues gallery.
Yeah. But, I mean, you look at these and it's like, why didn't they didn't even, the executive council never even considered the parents' letter. It got tossed to the side and they ignored it. They had an agenda. They wanted to see these people dead.
Yeah. What about her parents? Were they alive at all?
Her mother, she's an interesting character herself. Her mother was from the Cape. That's where her mother and father met, actually. Her father was just an attorney. And her mother was previously married to a guy, William Newcomb. And they had 7 kids. He had a big tavern. It's now the Newcomb Ruggles Tavern. It's still in Sandwich.
In the Cape.
On the Cape,
Yeah.
in Sandwich.
Yeah.
It's a private house, but it's there. And she had a couple other businesses. When Newcomb passed away, she ran them. She met Ruggles, and I guess he swept her off her feet, so she left the businesses to her kids. But her family founded the town of Bourne. Her name was Bathsheba Bourne Ruggles.
Born on the Cape.
On the Cape.
Actually, it's before you cross over the bridge, right?
Either before or right after, I don't remember
Yeah,
which.
because there's 2
But
bridges.
they founded the town of Bourne.
Yeah.
And her mother had 7 kids by her first marriage and 7 kids by the second marriage.
Oh,
So mom was popping out babies for about 20 years or whatever it
that
was.
poor woman.
But she, and again, it's difficult to come to conclusions, but from what I've seen, her husband and she had differing opinions
Yeah.
because she didn't seem to support the loyalist cause, the British cause at all.
Yeah.
But when Bathsheba was in jail, her mother never came to see her.
Yeah.
20 miles away, 25 miles away, mother never came to see her at all, just gone. She seemed like she was a bit of a hard woman from my research. But again,
Your mother or Bathsheba?
the mother.
Yeah. I wonder, can't imagine. Anyway, we're talking with Ed Londergan, and he is the author of And Unlike Any Other. Where did they get this, Ed?
Yeah, well, I came up with the title. The title's interesting because I don't remember what I called it at first. Oh, Seducer of Souls was one, but an agent said, sounds like some sort of gothic thing. It's like, okay, never mind. And I probably had 12 other names for it. And one day I was sitting there and I just started typing titles down, potential titles down. And I had 3 or 4 pages and none of them worked. So I sat down and thought, what about Bathsheba? What is it about her? Well, she's not like any other woman that you heard of.
Yeah.
Well, okay, what about the time? It was a Revolutionary War. It was a time that unlike any other. And it's like, oh, what about the murder? That was unlike any other. Bingo. We got the woman, we got the time, we got the murder. That's it. So that's how I came up with the title.
So tell us again where they can get your books.
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Hudson Booksellers, IndieBound, Books A Million, Powell's Booksellers, and you go to my website, edlondergan.com, and you can see it all there. I have a nice trailer that was done, I had done, for the whole thing, which is pretty cool too.
Are you going to be? Were you at Chattanooga recently, or are you going?
I'm going to be in Chattanooga on May 14th,
Okay. Which time frame?
1 o'clock,
Okay,
1 to
it's usually
3.
1 to 3, and then there's 1 from
2 to
okay.
4, yeah.
They have. It's the most interesting thing over there. A lot of my new authors, they kind of are a little shy yet. They want to sit more towards the front at that table there. But as they get a little bit better at presenting, there's a huge room in the back. Are you going to go to that one?
I'm going to be in a room.
Yeah,
because I have a presentation, so yeah.
You'd be great at giving a whole presentation.
Yeah, I am.
mean, it's
I have
just
it.
make sure. They'll advertise it, but what they don't do is make a huge big sign. Make sure it's at the door and at there, because I've had all this, where is everyone? Because they're just going right by.
They're going down, yeah.
The
I
ones
can
in
do
the
that.
back, I wish I could move the room to the front.
I can do that. But yeah, I have a great presentation I put together.
And you've
about this,
been
too.
over at the, every December they have the ARIA, the big Rhode Island.
I haven't been to that.
You haven't been?
I have not been to that. I don't know about it.
Oh, you should hook up with Steve Porter. He is he's a publisher right over in Rhode Island.
Okay.
Oh, he's a great guy.
Okay.
I'll write you about him.
Okay.
He and his wife, actually I think someone stepped down, but used to run the Rhode Island Authors Expo every single December
Okay.
in Cranston
Yeah.
at the Rhodes of the Pawtucket, huge building, like a ballroom. But about 2 years ago, they found out it was probably ready to go down like the Titanic.
Okay.
So it's now in a different place in Warwick. I can't think of it. One of the big motels there.
Okay.
He's a good guy to connect with.
Okay, fine.
Really, yeah.
I'm doing it, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
I am going to be at the Asparagus Festival in West Brookfield on May 21st.
The Asparagus Festival?
Asparagus Festival.
You going to eat any of it?
Well, it's all asparagus themed.
Yeah.
The legend is asparagus came to the United States through West Brookfield.
Yeah.
Because there was a Dutch consul, Diederik Leertouwer, who lived in town and evidently missed his asparagus. So he sent to Holland for asparagus roots, and they grew. And 30 years ago, they started this festival.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, before everything happened, they estimated there were 8,000 people there.
Yeah.
I was selling my books, and they come from the Cape and Maine and Albany and Vermont, all over. So it's great. So I'll be there.
Is the rule you have to eat an asparagus stock?
No, they have chowder. They have all sorts of food trucks. They have everything.
You know, over in Northampton, every year they have the Scottish Festival. Have
Oh,
you
the
been to
Highland
that?
Games. No, we've never been.
Oh, I've been to that. Of course, I'm very Scottish on Dad's side.
Yeah.
Jocelyn is,
Yeah.
and that's quite a jig. Well, let me tell you, I even had the director of it on the show years ago, and
Yeah.
he told me about it.
Okay.
From here in Northampton, it's a jaunt.
Yeah, it is.
But it is fun. I mean, they
Okay.
have all the guys coming out with the bagpipes,
The whole thing?
and they even have genealogy tents. You can go and they will look it for you.
Wow.
Lots of fun.
So this is like stepping onto an Outlander set.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And vendors.
Okay.
Some of the clans have their own setup table there. Not all of them, obviously.
Yeah, right. But
There's the Isle of Lewis in Scotland.
oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. And then
Have to
my
check it out.
family, Lewis,
Have to get
they
there.
were connected very often back then. The tribes or the clans were
Mm.
connected. So the name of Cloud and Harris were
Okay.
with Lewis's.
Okay. All right.
We've got about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
What would you like to share with the gardeners?
Then if you go to my website, you'll see all the talks I'm giving and all the places I'm going to be. So if you're in any of those areas, come on down and see me. Again, it'll be Asparagus Festival, May 21st in West Brookfield. If you've never been to West Brookfield, take a ride. It's a gorgeous town.
What's the address?
It's right on the common.
It's right on the common.
Right,
Okay.
you can't miss it. If you come into West Brookfield, you're going to see thousands of people.
Yeah.
It's right there.
And everyone around here knows we're chatting like this. Around
Right.
here, out of the country, they don't.
No, they don't. But
No.
and I have talks set up at a bunch of libraries and historical societies
Yeah.
coming up too. But the whole schedule is on my website. So
Yeah, I
you can
tell
take a
my
look
guests,
at
I
it.
said, once you're on YouTube, you're all over the world. I have a former classmate in high school who watches it in Japan.
Oh yeah.
You're all over the lot.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So,
But if you like historical fiction, you ought to go pick this up. Unlike any other, I know I wrote it, but it is a great story.
Yeah.
It's fascinated people for 244 years.
what's your
And
next book? I know there's got to be another
it's
one.
called The Farmhouse.
Yeah.
And it's about the importance of family and personal redemption. It's not historical fiction, it's contemporary fiction. And I'm going to get that out to my readers, hopefully in a bit, my beta readers, my test readers.
Sure, yeah.
And then I'll get that done hopefully in the next couple months. Then it goes out to agents to see if somebody will pick
Well, you
it
got to
up.
let me know now.
I will. Oh, God, I'm not going to forget.
No, you can go down to the library downstairs here in Upton. If you're out of town, out of state, you're going to have to use the sites that he gave you. But, boy, I don't know how many years it's been since you were on the show. Was it
2012? So
Well,
it's been,
2012 was
oh,
when
I
we-
mean, the last time.
that's when we began. But in the 2015, 2016, we began here in our
Because I wrote another book, a job search tips book that I
Yeah,
was down
you were
here.
on that.
And that was 2017, maybe?
That's probably back, yeah.
Yeah, right
'Cause
around
we
there.
moved from the temporary site in
Okay.
2015, right here.
Okay.
And we may be moving again. We don't know where our site's going to go, but it's going to stick around.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you for having me, Jen. I appreciate it.
All righty. We'll see you next time and be my guest.
Riding on a shooting star, heading out toward a dream. Tomorrow's even closer than it seems.